Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. Story number 1. When I was younger, between the age of 12 and 15, I lived in a very quiet and well-to-do neighborhood. There were some kids, but it was mostly older couples or retired seniors who lived there. It was a very safe neighborhood. My parents don't lock their car doors at home, and sometimes the front door is left open with the storm door unlocked. So nobody really assumes anything is going to happen. Anyway, since there were so few kids in the neighborhood, we all knew each other. Activity pretty much centered around this one house with a family that had 5 kids, 3 of whom were also around 12 to 15. Often we would go out in the evening, early nighttime to their house, and play manhunt in the dark, while our parents would hang out and chat. Keep in mind that my family has 4 kids, and with the additional neighbor kids, we had about 10 to 12 kids under the age of 16, playing manhunt at 10 p.m. Activities stayed on the property of the house, but we did venture towards the street at times. One night we were playing manhunt and getting quite into it. It was late, around 9:30 to 10 p.m. I don't remember exactly what happened, but at one point we started noticing there was a red pickup truck that kept driving really slowly past the house where we were playing. Us, being naive children, didn't think much of it the first few times. A lot of people are friends in the neighborhood, so we assumed it was just a family friend, until it didn't stop happening. I, being the oldest of the 4 and the second oldest of the group, and also incredibly paranoid, decided that we should all probably go to the backyard where it's fenced off and tell our parents. They were moderately concerned but weren't worried and told us to stay in the backyard. After that, we were hesitant to keep playing, but eventually the truck was forgotten and we organized another manhunt night at the same house. We were having fun and doing normal children things when we noticed the truck again. It kept driving by slowly, with the windows rolled all the way up and tinted so we couldn't see who was inside. The game ended immediately, and the parents decided it was probably best if everyone went home after that. Manhunt nights didn't really happen after that, and we became more paranoid about being out late. Thankfully nothing happened, but creepy red truck driver, let's not meet again. Story number 2. This happened when I was around 10 years old. I live in a relatively small county, and it only took a couple hours to drive to get from my house to my aunt's in another county. The story starts off with me and my mom driving home from my aunt's. We were driving on a country road when this battered-looking minivan started driving in front of us at a roundabout. We were the only 2 cars on the road. There were gardening tools and a tarp in the back window. It was clear the driver was either drunk, high, or just a fucking idiot. They were repeatedly swerving out of their lane like they were a video game protagonist. It was a hot day, so both of our cars had the windows down, so we could hear what sounded like a sermon blasting from their radio. We drove behind them for roughly 7 minutes with my mom muttering about the state of the country. The minivan abruptly stopped in the middle of the road, which roughly pissed off my mom. The driver did an illegal U-turn during which 2 things happened. I saw the driver's face. He was a skinny middle-aged man with a dirty yellow hair and a beard. We both got a look at each other's license plates. The driver turned into the opposite lane and drove past us, heading back into town, still driving erratically and nearly hitting us. After he was gone, my mom pulled over and called the police to report him, giving them his license plate and a description of his appearance. The cop thanked us and promised to get right on it. When we were nearly home, my mom got a call from the police, and they said they had arrested the guy who had nearly hit us. The man had warrants for drug dealing and domestic abuse. My mom was thanked, and we all joked about her being a hero over pizza that night. Go to a few weeks later, when school had started up again. I had gone with my dad to the hardware store. While my dad was at checkout, I was looking out at the parking lot when I saw the same battered minivan driving out of the lot. I didn't see the driver, so I convinced myself it must only be a coincidence, although my dad noticed I seemed uneasy for the rest of the night. A few days later, my mom came home early from work, looking like she had just run a marathon. She gave me and my brother tight hugs, and we were sent to bed earlier than usual that night. I didn't learn about this next part until last year. The reason my mom was acting so weird is because her secretary had reported seeing a strange man inspecting the license plates of my mother's car. My mom asked what the man looked like and froze when she was given the description of the guy she had reported. That weekend, my mom didn't want any of us kids leaving the house, but I was a stubborn child and we all demanded to be allowed out for a quick walk around the neighborhood. While I was out and roughly 15 minutes walk away from my house, a vehicle drove past me. It was a minivan, and the same man was in the driver's seat, giving me a friendly nod. As soon as he was out of sight, I ran back home and told my parents, who immediately bundled all of us up into my dad's car, and we drove to stay the night at Grandma's. I was put in the guest room but had zero chance of falling asleep, so I was wide awake for all the drama that happened that night. My parents called the cops and informed them about the man stalking us. A couple of hours later, a squad car pulled up outside, and the officers told my parents everything. When they arrived to our house, they had discovered the front door had been forced open. Some of our nicest possessions had been smashed, and we were left in shards on the floor. But that's not the worst part. No. The worst part was the police found the man. The man was in the pantry holding what a female officer described as the biggest knife she had ever seen. We spent the next few days at Grandma's while my parents handled all the legal side of things. The man was sentenced to life in a psychiatric hospital, and none of us have seen him since. I dread to think what would have happened had I not gone for a walk that day. Story number 3. I'm not going into great detail about where I work for various reasons, and I won't name the cult for the same reasons. The main reason being that I work with very young children. It's kind of like a daycare though, and we have an outside playground with a tall green fence to keep the weirdos out. Thankfully, they worked great. Alright, let's get to the beef. It was a beautiful day outside, and one of the kids had kindly asked me to play tag. I needed to get some exercise, and I'm so weak when it comes to saying no to kids. I was it for about 20 minutes when I saw the creep. There's a strip mall near my job. People walk and drive by very often. But when they walk, they go out of their way to not look at the kids, or to walk several feet away from the fence. This man was swaying against the fence, and he was close enough to poke his fingers through it. I went from chasing kids to slowly jogging. I didn't want to make it obvious, but it probably was. This guy was fucking spooky. He wasn't very tall, but he was very thin. His cheeks were sunken, and his limbs were gangly with his arms hanging by his sides. He was wearing a blue polo shirt and khakis with a brown belt. His clothes were loose and clearly not his size at all. On his shirt he had a name tag and a button that had a logo of what I thought was a company. Based on the logo's design, I assumed he worked for a children's play place. Before I walked up to him, he had just stopped in the middle of the fence, staring at the kids. I stopped and stared back, waiting for him to say anything. Something to not make me think he was a predator. He just stared at them. My coworker stepped up, asked him, "Can I help you, sir?" With big dark eyes, he looks at her. He starts mumbling questions about what our job was, and that he knew someone that would need our services. We told him that our facility was for children, not adults. It had only been a minute-long conversation, but I didn't want this creep too close to the kids any longer. I told him, "We can give you more information at the front of the building. And oh yeah, the playground is at the back. And it's clearly the back of the building." So he knew what he was doing. "If you have questions, you can go around." I only said this because the front door is locked, and you need to be buzzed in. It would give us enough time to go on lockdown. He nodded slowly. I couldn't help but notice how emaciated this man was. He then gave me the 1,000-yard stare, and he seemed to have difficulty speaking. I briefly wondered if he was mentally handicapped. Anyway, the creep nods his head and proceeds to take something out of his pocket. It looked like a gift card in one of those small envelopes you buy. I hold my hands up and quickly say, "I can't accept that through a fence, or at all." My coworker chimes in, "Yeah, can't take that, sir. You need to please go around to the front." He says nothing as he puts it in his pockets. I wave goodbye and hastily start corralling the kids back inside with my coworker. What happened next was a blur. Dragging the kids inside and locking the doors, quietly telling my boss about the creep, the doorbell at the front started ringing. My boss talked to him through the door. He asked, "How often are the kids here? Once a week?" She said, "I cannot answer that, sir." He nodded and left in a car driven by another man. Next day, shit got real. The morning after we reported the incident to the non-emergency line. We work with kids, so this is required, and just common sense to report any weird things that might happen. Of course, the cop didn't seem that concerned until my boss told him what the logo on the creep's shirt said. I'd been staring at the fence, so I hardly could remember what it said. When my boss said the name, the cop looked up from his notepad and asked her, "Ma'am, are you sure that's what it said?" She said, "Yes, I have it in this picture I took on my phone." The officer takes the time to explain to her that the creep was a member of a cult. They focus on positive thoughts and have meetings where they stare at things and focus on positive thoughts to change the world. They gather in large groups and do all of this together. When this man was staring at the kids, he thought he was healing them, possibly even casing my work as a location to stare at things to improve, which is just fucked up. We haven't seen the original creep or anyone else new yet, but I looked them up and found that there's going to be a meeting in the next few months, very close to my job. My coworkers and I are on standby in case any more of these cult members come back. I just kept thinking about the man, standing so still, just staring at the kids that have no idea what to do or why this was happening. I think about what it would be like if a whole crowd of wide-eyed weirdos just formed outside like he did. It makes me want to invest my next paycheck in bear mace. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos, guys. I hope everyone's having a wonderful week so far. The weekend is right around the corner. I want to encourage everyone to continue to send me your stories. My email is in the info box below. It is thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. And I want to thank everyone who has submitted stories up until this point. Leave a comment in the description box below on any story or theme ideas for upcoming videos that you guys would be interested in. And until we meet again, stay sinful.